Take it away, Tom.
Thank you. Developers, they're always moaning about something, aren't they? Developers are always moaning. Have you noticed that? It's not really their fault. It's sort of how they work. That's sort of how they think. Everything for them is black or white. The code compiles or it doesn't. And so really, when they're looking for bugs, when they're looking for problems, they kind of tune their brain to figure out the stuff that doesn't seem quite right and doesn't really seem like it fits. And that tends to make them moan quite a lot. And Teams developers, they're the worst. Like, what do they moan about? Well, primarily, one of the things Teams developers like to moan about is the lack of a client SDK, right? Am I right? So this is, I mean, we always used to have this, right? We had this in Skype for Business. We had this client SDK. And the Teams platform now has so many things. It has all these different things. But what it doesn't have is a client SDK. And so we like to moan about it. But it's kind of a big ask from Microsoft, right? Because if you think about why, because maybe this is coming because it was actually mentioned at Inspire recently. Although I say mentioned, it wasn't actually mentioned. It was one bullet on one slide that got about 5 seconds of airtime, but that might mean it's coming. Why? Why is this? Like on the one side, you've got a whole team of people saying like, we want this thing, we want this thing. And on the other side, maybe. But just think about it from the team's point of view, the team's team point of view. You've got Teams is like the operating system for work, right? It's where you go to get stuff done. The whole point is to get all the stuff into Teams and keep people in Teams so they can be more productive and use more Teams. So they're not super incentivized to get people out of Teams. They're much more incentivized to get people into Teams, which is kind of fair. But if you're a product manager trying to make decisions on which features happen next, that's kind of where you're going to go. And that does kind of make sense. But Teams is hiding something of a little secret, maybe. So we know Teams as that super scalable thing, that platform that's got us through the last 18 months, the high quality, the voice, the video, the chat platform. A lot of that isn't Teams. A lot of that Teams is, it's probably a bit unfair to say taken the credit for, but a lot of that isn't actually Teams. There's actually something else doing that under the hood. That something else is called IC3. It's got a catchy name, an Intelligent Conversation and Communication Cloud. That's actually the platform that supports all of this voice, this video, all of this chat in Teams. That's kind of the real workhorse that's powering a lot of this stuff, which is interesting. Have you ever walked into the wrong bar just before a football match? Because that's sort of the feeling I'm getting about now. It's like, Tom, this is a Teams conference, and you're coming in here telling me that actually it was not Teams all along. That's okay. Don't stop listening just yet. But it's because you're all Teams people and we're all Teams people that this stuff is so important and interesting, because although that would be interesting by itself, something even more interesting happened back in 2019, before the pandemic. Those IC3 people thought, this is quite a good platform. We should do a bit more with it than just give it to Teams. So what they did was build an API for it. Now it's interesting. So ACS is what they called it, the Azure Communication Services. And ACS is the API for IC3, because Microsoft loves acronyms. It's the same backbone as Teams. It's with a nice kind of front end on it for developers. It's been built by the Azure team, and it's very developer friendly because, and this is kind of a key point, right? It's built by the Azure team. It's not been built by the Teams team, the Microsoft Office team, the Microsoft 365 team, all the way up that org structure. This is a completely different org structure. The Azure org structure goes in a completely separated line, okay? Two completely different product groups, two very different money structures in Microsoft as well. So lots and lots of difference. The Azure folks tend to be slightly more developer focused as well, because that's the whole point, like, of Azure, right? It's driving, that Azure usage, and they're super happy to open up IC3 to more usage because they get their money from Azure consumption. So they don't really care how you use it as long as you use it. Because Okay, still with me? Right. So because ACS and IC3 is all and Teams are all essentially the same thing, they sort of sit together really nicely. Teams sits on the same platform that your application can sit on via ACS, and is also the same platform that other services, like we're seeing LinkedIn Video, we're seeing Dynamics, all of them starting to use this exact same backbone and this exact same platform, which is really good news for us. The other cool thing they did was say, well, actually, because Teams is just an IC3 meeting under the hood, why don't we just let ACS users, people connecting via ACS clients, just connect straight into Teams meetings as guest users? We could do that because it's all an IC3 under the hood. That would be cool. And now suddenly it's interesting for the Teams ecospace, because now suddenly you can write clients in ACS that can connect into Teams meetings as guest users. And that's why this stuff is interesting. So really quickly, we just need to level set 101 on exactly what ACS is today and what it can do, and then we'll jump into some demos. So you don't have to be a developer to really kind of understand this and get this, and don't worry if you're not a developer at all, but I think it's still worth understanding the capabilities, because then you know what's possible, you know what's not possible, and you know if you're being told stuff that is fanciful. Because this is just kind of emerging, and it's gonna get picked up a lot more, and there's gonna be a lot more kind of claims and all the rest of it. So what is it, what is it not? Fundamentally, it's a developer platform. It's not a product. It's a thing developers take as a service and build into their solution to build something else, right? It's not, it's not like a product in the way that Teams is. It's got all sorts of things in it, but one of the key ones is a voice over IP platform for making and receiving calls. So things like voice, video, content sharing, peer-to-peer, group, all the things that Teams does, because it's the same platform. It can also be a platform for chat, so long-lived conversations over SMS. So the best example of that is when you get an SMS about like a parcel being delivered, and you can reply back and say, actually, do it tomorrow, deliver it to the neighbor. You're having a long-lived conversation with something on the other end, and you're doing it over SMS. ACS can kind of do that for you as well, if you like. And also the key thing here is that because it's a developer platform and it's meant for developers building solutions on top of, it's kind of easier to build customer-friendly solutions with it that don't require, for instance, plugins or an app to download or anything like that. You can build it right into the browser. One interesting difference, I guess, or thing to call out is PSTN. So right now, there's only outbound PSTN support. There's no inbound PSTN support for these solutions, which kind of sounds like a bit of a gotcha, right? So show of hands, is PSTN important for enterprises today? Yeah, maybe, okay. So, and also show of hands, who at home has a PSTN line that they use every day? Every day. Hold on. Some every week. Okay, yeah. That disconnect is kind of interesting, right? And I think this is where ACS is different in the way that they're thinking. You can't imagine Teams going to market without PSTN really for enterprises, right? But ACS has, because it's a slightly different thing. And I think this is for me is the key thing, right? This is the thing that identifies it as different from Teams really, or extending Teams, is this, where it's a real opportunity for B2C scenarios, to extend Teams outside the organization and let people from outside the organization talk to people on the inside of the organization who are using Teams. This is the slide you can take a photo of and tweet to show that you were attending, by the way, and to show that you were listening. The other big difference is auth. So in Teams land, everybody has to be authed. Everybody has to have a license. Otherwise, nothing works. ACS is way more fluid than that. So if you imagine a customer portal that users might log into, it's unfeasible to give everybody a Teams license in order to make a video call. That doesn't make sense, right? ACS is very different. The choice is yours about where you give that license to. So imagine you've got an application. Typically, there might be a front end, which is web or mobile based, and a back end, which is got your business logic and it's got your auth and all that sort of stuff in it. ACS fits really nicely into that. So your back end is responsible for owning that identity. And again, don't worry too much about this. If you're not a developer, it doesn't really matter. The thing is, your backend can make a decision, yes, no, about whether or not this particular user should be allowed to do some ACS stuff. It can generate an ACS identity. So an ACS identity is literally just a GUID. Like, it's super lightweight. It's not tied to anything. It's not tied to AD. It's just an ID that gets given out. You can store it against that user if you want, and then you know when they come back next time you can reuse it and get some sort of feel for how often people are doing things, or you can just throw it away and get another one next time. Doesn't really matter. The other thing you do is pick the capabilities or scopes of what your user can do. So things like, can they do a voice over IP call? Can they make it send and receive SMS messages? Whatever else it is, do that. That's another line of code. And then one more line of code to generate an access token. And you send that access token back to the front end, and your front end does everything else connecting to the ACS service. So it's really easy and lightweight. If you wanted to, you could go through this process of generating an identity and access code, an access token for every single user that visited your website, if you wanted to, and every single user could immediately have a have the capability to make a video call. You can do that. Remember, it's charged by consumption, so you can do what you want, but you pay for it, right? So that's the key difference. Okay, let's build something. So we're going to do two things. First of all, we're going to focus in on just, because we haven't got long left, we're going to focus in just on voice over IP calling and joining a Teams meeting. So those are the fun things, those are the interesting things. Let's do those. We're going to ignore SMS and PSTN for now. And we're going to build a video portal, and we're kind of going to do it in two ways. So hands up any React developers. Oh, good. That was one more than I thought there was going to be. That's good. Hands up anyone who's done a bit of HTML, a bit of messing around, like a bit of JavaScript, something on GeoCities 20 years ago. Yeah, okay, perfect, good. This will land okay, good. I guessed right. So we're going to start the first one ground up, just HTML, just JavaScript, super basic, and show you how you can build on that. It won't be pretty, but it will be functional, and we're going to start with this one first, where we just get the token, we create a call, we join a Teams meeting, and that'll be it, pretty much, but you'll be able to see it in the Teams meeting. Then we're going to add onto it, and it will get a little bit more complicated, but not too crazy. We're going to add the video bit, because that makes it interesting, and do a video call. And then we're going to throw that away and start again. And then what we're going to do for the second time around is we are going to use React. We're going to use a composite UI control, and that process might make you want to go and look into React. We'll see. So if we could flip to the demo machine, which hopefully hasn't gone to sleep. Okay, perfect. So let's keep this really simple. Here is some HTML. It is rubbish HTML, but the point is there's hardly anything to it, right? There's a bit of a title, there's something about the call state, there's an input to put something in, and then there's two buttons, a connect and disconnect button. Okay, so that's fairly boring and basic. This is the JavaScript behind it. Now there is some stuff in here. Again, if you're not a developer, don't freak out about it. The bits I want to talk about. So this first bit here around getting the token. Getting the token, I said about being a front end and a back end thing. So this, let me just run this again so you can see it. Right. So front end and back end thing. That HTML and that JavaScript, that's our front end. On the back end is the thing that generates the identity, generates the access token. Not going to talk about that code, can talk about it afterwards if you want to, not enough time. Okay. Just believe me, there is a back end. There's an API call I can make there. This is Postman. API call I can make. What I get back is the ID and the access token. We're good to go. We're going to use the access token. That's what we're going to use in our front end. So that's all that first bit is. It's just calling that API to go and get the access token. Second thing, we create a call agent, a call client and a call agent. These constructs are Azure Communication Services constructs. We're importing them up here. These live in NPM, you can get them, and it's really kind of fairly basic, like create client, passing in that token that I talked about that we just got, that gives everything, you're ready to go at this point. When you created this call agent, you can actually go and join the meeting. But what meeting, I hear you say? What we're going to do is create a Teams meeting, get the link to it. We're going to put that link in that input box. Hang on, let me show you. Don't want to lose you at this point. This is what that HTML page looks like when it's rendered. Pretty rubbish, right? But it's got the input box and it's got the connect button. Now, every time this page loads, I better do it again actually. Every time this page loads, you'll notice the connect button start off grayed and then it will go normal. That was too quick. That is because He says, okay, good. That is because on startup, it goes to get the new token. And once it's got the new token, it enables the connect button. That's all that's happening under the hood. Like, so I know that's ready. It's ready to take in a Teams meeting. And when it takes in that Teams meeting that I'm going to literally paste in a minute, it is going to put it in here, this meeting link here. That's where that is. And then I'm going to say this call agent.join, and I'm going to give it that meeting link. So all I need is the actual shareable URL of a Teams meeting. How do you get that? A million different ways. You could create the meeting in Graph if you wanted to. You could use an existing meeting that you've just got from somewhere and take the link. Like, it's not a magic URL. It's not a special set of coordinates. It's literally the meeting URL. We're going to subscribe to some events. I'm going to come back to subscriptions in a minute, but all we're doing is checking on the state of the call being changed. And we're going to just write out that state to the screen. That is pretty much all we're going to do. The only other thing I need to do is go create a meeting. And join it. I'm not going to join it for audio just yet. And get the meeting link. Literally copy the meeting link. Okay, let's put that over there. Let's get this bit over here. Let's paste this in here. Okay, and all being well, you'll see the call state. You see it's changed to connected. Guest user joins. I know it doesn't look very much. Audio is actually working. If I was to unmute, we'd get that wah, wah, wah. You can't really tell. You'll have to trust me. Like, there's nothing else that happens here because there isn't any more code. Like, I tried to keep that code as simplistic as possible so you could kind of see what was going on. But that's a fully set up call that's got a guest user, if I can get the participant list, a guest user that shows up just like a regular Teams guest user. They're in a regular Teams meeting. Okay, you can kind of see how you can layer all sorts of stuff on top of this. That's the bare minimum. So that's the first bit. Let's make it. Yes, you can. You can change the name of the guest. You do it here. I don't think I do it actually. It's one of the options. So when you do call agent here .join, you can take in additional options. One of those options can be the display name. So yes, you absolutely can set what that display name is. Okay, let's level up. So let's make it a little bit more interesting by adding some more stuff to it. So same rubbish HTML page, keeping the call state, keeping the input, got a connect and disconnect button. We've also got a show remote video button, and we've got a participant list. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to include a participant list, and we're also going to include video. So let's talk that through, because this bit is a little bit more complicated, but still starts off the same, getting a token. This bit is the same, creating and getting a call agent. Okay, let's drop down to, let's do these in orders. Joining a call. Here we do have join options actually, but I'm not including the display name. I'm doing some extra things. So let's circle back up again. So let's talk about video. Video is done via WebRTC. ACS abstracts a lot of the WebRTC stuff, meaning that you don't really need to worry about it unless you really want to. What it means is inside of ACS, you can have a device manager. There is literally, like, you go to ACS in the call client and you go .callclient.get device manager. And then you can do device manager.get cameras, you can do get microphones, get speakers, and you get an array of the devices. You can iterate through them or present them in a nice drop-down box, or you can cheat and do what I do and just choose the first one you find. And then what I've done is created what's called a local video stream. Again, local video stream, ACS construct, it comes as part of the ACS stuff. Like, no, I'm not using anything that's not part of the ACS, like what you get with ACS. I'm not using any of the libraries or anything like that. I'm creating a local video stream, and then a video stream renderer, and then I'm creating a view. It's a lot of steps, basically, that are by themselves very easy, but you just have to do them all. And then there's an element here called self-video. So let's go back to the HTML page. In here, there is a div called self-video, and it's not anything magical. It's not a special div. It's not video. It's nothing else. It's literally just a div, and I'm specifying that and saying, go and get the self video, the local participant video, from that camera 0 in the array, and just pop it in that div. And ACS will do the rest, and I'll show you what that means. Quick, if you're interested, this is just a way of hosting the web content on my machine. It's Webpack is what it's called. So I'm just flipping from one directory to the next, because this is the directory with this code in it, and it will just render it in my local browser. So if it now refreshes, you can see it looks different. It says demo 2, it's got the participant list, and any moment now, it's got that camera 0, and it's written out to that div. Okay, so that's a good start. I've got local video, but I mean, that's not super impressive by itself. The other thing I've done is when you join the call, I'm passing, as well as the destination, as a join option, I'm passing that local video stream. So that tells ACS, when you connect this call, do it for video and use this stream. Now, if you're like a Machiavellian developer or something, or just a bad developer, there's technically no reason you can't display the video feed from one video and actually send another. It's entirely up to you. You probably shouldn't, because it will confuse everybody, but actually, that's all you're doing. You're saying, like, the local video stream is this object, this local video stream that I've set up there, and I just happen to be using the same one for your self feed as the one you're sending, because that seems to make sense. But this is what I mean by, like, you have complete control here over how this works. We haven't even like, obviously the look and feel you have complete control over, because we're not doing any of it. So yeah, but even things like that, you can control, you know, the video that gets sent, you can control the audio that gets sent. I'm going to keep talking if I get some water. You can control all the different experiences exactly how you want to, and it's all just HTML and JavaScript. So I said I was going to talk about events. Thank you very much. You can see on there we've still got the state changed event. We're going to have to use some more events, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So ACS loves an event, and that's because everything that happens from this point on, from joining the call, is going to be asynchronous, and we don't really know when it's going to happen, right? Plain HTML and JavaScript doesn't really like events very much, I don't think. Like, it makes the code really messy really quickly. Okay, really, what we want to do is display video. We know we're sending video, we've done sending video. The bit we need to do next is displaying the incoming video, okay? But what does that look like, and how does it show up? Because 3 people join, one's got video. Okay, so now we've got 1 video feed. Another person turns on their video, now we've got 2 video feeds. Another person, so like, this stuff happens all the time. Like, you need to, that's why it needs to be event driven. You're not going to get 1 feed. So that's an important point. ACS is not going to give you 1 rendered feed that's mixed, that's got everything in it. It will give you individual feeds, because you have complete control over how you lay them out, right? So that means you need to subscribe. So you need to subscribe to the remote participant list being updated. Well, that will give you a the participant list anyway, which is handy. But for every participant, you then need to subscribe to, has their video state changed? What video devices have they got? Because you could be sending video, or you could be sending screen share, or you could be sending both. They're all things you need to subscribe. And then for each of those, when they show up, you then need to subscribe to what's their state. Is it paused? Is it active? So really quickly, regular JavaScript gets pretty messy, which is why I've cheated. And in this example, I have cheated by including a show remote video button. So you wouldn't have one of these show remote video buttons, okay? I'm cheating and saying, I'm going to join the meeting, I'm going to make sure I know the video is going, and then I'm going to click that button, and then you're going to see the video, and you're going to think it's amazing, right? Really, that should all be event-driven, okay? I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but the reason I haven't is because it would make the code, like, much more complicated than it is and really look messy. So we're subscribing to events. So what happens actually when you do click on that video, on that button to show video? We are going to iterate through every remote participant. We're going to find their video streams, and we're going to find the video streams where the media stream type is video. So you can have video and you can have screen sharing. Those are the 2 supported types today. I might add more, who knows? If it's there and it's available, then we're going to render the participant stream. What does rendering the participant stream mean? Okay, let's come down to here. It looks quite similar to how we render the Self-view, yes.
Very quick question: if they're not sharing their video, does that not register, or do you get a blank screen come through from that one?
If they join without video, then it doesn't show up as a media stream. So that you look at that person, it's like there's no media streams. If they did have video and then they stop doing video, I think it stays there, but the state changes to like disconnected or idle or something, like to tell you that's happened. And that happens quite a bit with screen sharing because people jump in and out of screen sharing. So lots of like moving parts to keep a hold of, which is where vanilla JavaScript does tend to fall down a little bit. Yeah, so this rendering of the remote participant video, it's really similar actually to how you do it in the self view. So let's put all that together then. I can probably use the same meeting. So I'm going to connect. It's going to put this user into this meeting, so you can see the video, kind of as you'd expect. And then I will turn on video over here with this camera. Okay, and then come and click my magic button to go and iterate through that participant list again. And you'll get the video feed from the other end, right? So they are different video feeds, even though they don't quite look it. So you can kind of see how that's all working, and it's kind of cool, but it's also kind of messy. If you were doing this in production, you would not do it quite like this. You would not make people click a button to say, is there video? Let's find out. But you could take all that code, you could tidy it up, you could iterate it. It's actually really kind of straightforward. You're left with either a problem or an opportunity in how you lay this stuff out, because some people will love this and be like, great, I can super brand this. I can make this look nothing like Microsoft Teams and it doesn't matter. I can make it look like my company, my experience, whatever. All of the things at the top, by the way, to bring in the library of controls and stuff. There's also native iOS and Android versions of that, so you can do exactly the same thing over there. Some people will love that. Some people will be like, yeah, seems like a lot of work. Is there an easier way? Yes, there is. This is where you kind of need to jump into React land a little bit. But as I kind of, I didn't even talk about the participant list. We also rendered the participant list as well. Again, it was just happened when we clicked the show remote video button, I think, unless there might have been an event handler for it. But again, I'm only showing the ID because, with the participant list, you get the ID on the event to say there's a new participant, but you don't get any other information unless you subscribe to it, because all of that stuff can change. So if you want to get the display name, to put a nice display name up, you have to subscribe to the display name changing, and then you'll get told what the display name is, okay? Because people's display name changes, so, or could change. I don't know if that's technically true, but like in their world, it's an event, so they think it might change, right? But also like latency, all sorts of things might happen. It's a more defensive, it's a better way of coding all of this stuff than just getting it the first time. So that's why I didn't bother. All right, so let's look at, so that's all that, right? You can go there, you can do that. That's a totally valid way of doing it, and you can do it without needing to know any frameworks or anything. It's HTML and JavaScript. Also means it will fit right into any existing projects you've got, any existing portals you've got really nicely. It doesn't have to be React if you don't want it to be. Let's go and look at something else that's different though. So I should have kept that meeting going too late. Let's make another one. I'll do it in a minute. All right, so let's stop this. Let's go to React. That might just take a second. So React, really quickly, is a web application framework. It sort of stands above the HTML and JavaScript bit, gives you a bit of an abstraction over some of that stuff, makes some things easier, makes some things harder. One of its kind of key tenets is that everything becomes a control. So all your features of your site or your experience are broken down into lots and lots of little controls. Each control is its own page. You can test separately. But also, there's a very rich library of controls from third parties that you can kind of import and drop in. And the ACS folks have a big library of ACS controls, meaning that you can drop in ACS components, which is kind of interesting. React, by the way, is also what they're rewriting Teams in, alongside the move from Electron. People say Electron's being rewritten, people say that Teams are being rewritten from Electron to React, which is nonsense and doesn't make sense. Two separate things are happening. Like they're replacing Electron and they're rewriting it from Angular, I think, to React. So anyway, Microsoft are all in on React pretty much at the moment. So let me show you what the React looks like whilst this takes a little bit of time to load. All right, so there's only one file to look at here, and it's already got a Teams meeting link in it, which we're not going to use, I don't think. We'll make another one. So if you're not familiar with React, this code will look different, but bear with me anyway. We're doing a lot of the same things, right? So we're still going to go and get our token from our backend. That's what's happening right there. That's kind of similar. And then there's also quite a lot less code, because now we are passing that token that we got somewhere where it says credential. We're passing a display name we provided, and we're passing the Teams meeting URL that we're going to paste in a minute. And that's pretty much all we're doing. And then down here, this bit down here in the return is what gets rendered onto the page. The only thing we're returning is this call composite. That call composite is a React control. It is, you can see it at the top somewhere. We've imported it from the Azure Communication React package, and that is going to render a nice calling experience for us. So what does that look like? It's essentially kind of, the rendering of this is essentially one line of code, which is quite nice, meaning that it, you could put it in an existing React application, you can kind of drop it in place, and it wouldn't get in the way. Let me just join this though, so you can see. Make a new meeting, copy the link. And this is what it looks like. Right, so let's come over here and pop in the meeting URL again. And save it. Meaning that this should reload if it hasn't. Okay, so we get a super rich experience for our one line of code that we put in with basically no effort. Okay, we get to choose devices, we get to turn the camera on and off and have a play with it. It all works as advertised because it's not code that I wrote, it's code that the ACS team have written, right? So it's also much more stable and nicer, and I didn't have to write it, so I didn't have to spend any money testing it or any of those things, right? So it's really nice. I can change all these things. It iterated all my devices for me, so I don't have to. And when I'm ready, I can click join call, and it will join me into that call. You can get a nice coffee cup thing. Now, it's not perfect. There's some things wrong with it, and let's talk about those now. If I can, right, so that's one of them. I'm in two minds about whether this is meant to be a problem or not. It seems to work better like that. It doesn't really like being scaled the other way, if that makes sense. One of the bigger things, and it's partly because I'm kind of cheating a little bit. I haven't set the height for it properly, and it's going full width because that's what it's the best layout for it to do. So it's got like a fixed height and a crazy width. So I could go and fix that. But when you're in the call, look at all this stuff that you can do. You've got all these controls. You can also override all of these. So this comes as like a one-liner called composite call, because that's the most impactful demo, right? One line of code, right? But you can actually go and get all of the individual controls that make up this composite control and say, actually, I want a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they all talk nicely to each other, and you can just wire them together in a different way. And it's a much nicer way of putting together if you've got like an enterprise grade product or something going in production and you're already familiar with React, this is a much nicer way to go because you're writing way less code. It's also more testable because all these component parts, you can just kind of feed test data through without actually needing to kind of go full ball with the setting up a call each time and everything like that. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much, and flip back to the slides for some closing thoughts. What did we learn? So This was previously not possible. This whole thing that I showed you was not possible until ACS came along and made it possible through Teams. So that's a big deal. Like, it's unlocked a bunch of B2C scenarios. I don't think you need to be a rockstar developer to do this. I think you can do it you can give this to any development team. Even if you're not a developer, I'd say it's worth having a look at some of that stuff to see if it's good for proof of concepts or just to kind of get the point across about what's possible. You can embed video in websites today and have them connect to Teams meetings. You don't have to do it via React, but you might want to. So go and build something. There's resources on the screen. The Microsoft Docs for ACS are really good, including all the libraries. There's a great library playground thing. You can go through and play with them and see what they all do. Code for everything I've just shown you is on GitHub, on my GitHub. That Learn ACS thing is like 15 days of stuff you could do with ACS. Yeah, go and build something. I hope you have fun. I think we've got a few minutes for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So once again, anybody in the room that has a question, raise your hand. I'll throw the thing at you. Anybody online, raise your hand in the meeting, and I'll enable your mic. So ask away. Here we go.
Hi, Tom. Awesome. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Awesome session. And do you have insight if this will come to Blazor 2 or if it will stick to React 10 and TypeScript 10? So, or is there a roadmap on Blazor?
Blazor. I don't know. Everything I've seen has been React based. I haven't seen anything in Blazor. I think you could probably make it happen because it's just native, right? So I think, but I haven't seen anything. I haven't looked into it, to be fair. In terms of generally where Blazor is inside Microsoft, I don't know. Like, it feels like it's not quite ready for that real deep integration. Like, if you look at all the examples for everything that's happening in M365 at the moment, they all tend to be React components, and I think that's where we're at the moment. And maybe Blazor will come along later for some of that stuff. I don't know.
So if you really want to start developing in Office and Teams and all the things, it's really important to learn React or at least TypeScript.
Yeah, it's like you don't have to at all. You don't have to. This is kind of true for some of the other web-based stuff in Teams, so like Teams apps and like components and stuff like that. You don't have to, but it might be a good idea. Like, certainly if you run out of runway with standard like HTML and JavaScript and you're looking to jump to a framework, I'd say jump to React. Don't go and jump to like Angular or one of the others. Jump to React if you're going to jump anywhere.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, so this will end the online version. If we could give a round of applause to our presenter. And thank you.